Let's talk about something that for a long time I actually struggled with is with people who doesn't seem to have sensitivity or consideration towards how I feel. And for some time, I actually struggle with it, feeling that, oh, why are they not really understanding my point? And then they often would be like dismissing my feelings or explaining that, oh, I didn't mean to do it this way, and etc. And as if it felt like they are trying to convince me that I shouldn't feel that way. And growing up, I actually was used to this pattern where there is a level of harshness, actually like tough love, you can say, is that whenever like someone is feeling something, then there is, oh, you shouldn't feel this way, or you should be actually grateful, or that hey, you should be stronger, etc. And sometimes it might be worse, there might be criticism, there might be punishment even. So growing up, I was actually used to the harder dynamics of communication. So I didn't actually notice what is exactly wrong because I never was exposed to a healthier dynamic of, you know, sharing about my feelings and then being received positively and with care, with nurturing. I didn't really get much of that. And then in my past marriage, I actually experienced my ex husband to often dismiss what I would share about how I felt or certain issues that I was having. Or he either dismisses it or he either explains that he didn't mean to do something, or then he might even criticize about it, like, hey, you should have thought like this and etc. and etc. There was no reason to this and that and etc. And at that time, I didn't really understand what is it that was wrong, and I was really absorbing all that, as in, oh, maybe I am being too much, maybe women are emotional, maybe men are logical, so he just wanted to fix the problem and etc. And then, you know, I never really understood what was happening. And because I wasn't into personal development, relationships and manifestation and spirituality, so I never really even had the words to describe it. So later, what I would understand as emotional safety and validation from other people. Like these were the things that I never really understood. And then for a long time, I really struggled to understand why is it that I don't feel so connected emotionally with my ex-husband, which was one of the major reasons why we often had conflicts and then couldn't repair our relationship until it finally led to our divorce. And for some time, I really struggled with this, really, people being dismissive and, judgmental, critical. But then, as I go through this journey or of inner work, personal development, I even have been in this 2-year course on modern therapeutic practices, shamanism, and then, learning about the human nature, childhood trauma, all those fluffy things. Then I could finally, understand what was happening in this kind of dynamics. And there are like lots of things that happens. So basically, why do we as a collective often lack of relational skills that creates the basic emotional safe space for each other? It's because many of us, we often grow up lacking the, healthier dynamics. So we are not exposed much to the healthier dynamics, then we don't know what healthy actually looks like. And then on the other hand, if you grew up in a very punitive house, in a very punitive family, let's say that you break a glass of water and then you are already, hey, why do you do that? You're so careless, etc. Instead of, for example, a parent would, lovingly say that, hey, it's all right. I sometimes accidentally, do mistakes. Also, let's just clean it together. I'll teach you how to clean it. You see, there is this difference. So when we grow up in a punitive family environment, like, and not just in the family, sometimes in school as well. Like in my generation, there are many people that I know remembers how their teachers were actually very punitive. Even if I try hard enough, I could actually remember like my past. Some of my teachers were being very punitive when I didn't even understand why was happening. So then people, they are on this high alert, which means that easy test. If you or anyone hears the words, we need to talk, and in a very neutral way, let's say the person is really, hey, we need to talk. Or like you receive a text message, like from your partner, your husband, boyfriend, girlfriend, wife, and you are already feeling this internal tension with it, really like, oh, what is it? What is it? Now I'm anxious. This can actually be a very good sign that you have grown up in a punitive environment. Because when we are anticipating like any bad situation is a potential punishment that we are waiting to happen, then our nervous system will already get defend myself mode on. So now we are anticipating. And, you know, people, like for example, with my ex husband, when I communicated that something wasn't feeling good for me or there was a problem, etc., not only I couldn't really explain myself in a clear way because, you know, I wasn't used to learn how to explain myself, how to be more in tune with my emotions. So then added to him feeling that, oh, some problem is coming, which means that I need to fix it because it's bad, because he also had a rough childhood. Then there are like many people, they actually react in a dismissive way. Like, for example, there are many men who grew up like, oh, boys don't cry, right? So they learn to dismiss their own feelings. Oh, I have to be strong. I shouldn't feel this way. Like, get myself up. Then, when they see similar emotions coming from other people, let's say their wives, girlfriends, then they would respond the same way. Hey, dismiss that emotion, dismiss and fix that emotion. So then the other person actually feels uncared for because the other person is trying to, fix it, dismiss it. And the other thing is that when people try to justify, hey, I didn't mean this, etc., etc., these people, they are actually worried that, oh, I did something wrong, therefore, like, I need to defend myself, to explain myself so that the other person understands that actually I didn't mean it, so then I don't get punished. And because they are in this survival mode, really this worried mode, then they cannot really empathize with how you feel. Like when there is fire around and both of you are like in the risk of catching fire, people cannot like be automatically, hey, I'll save you first, right? They have to, oh, fire, fire, fire. Okay, this done. Okay, now I am saving your fire. This is like very automatic. Doesn't mean that he doesn't care for you, but it's like automatic. So people are often in survival mode, and reactivity actually comes from it. It doesn't come from lack of care, at least most of the time, but actually the lack of capacity. And then, of course, there is also another component, which is a bit more nuanced, is the criticism. Because, like, I also experienced criticism is that people might not agree to why I would feel upset or why I would feel a certain way about a certain thing related to them or not. And then the criticism is like, oh, you should have done better, you should have done this, or you shouldn't have done that. And to these people, there are nuances. It's like some of them, it actually comes from a defensive mode as well, but instead of defending themselves, they're operation mode is actually attack the other person, so that they fix the situation through attack, which is a pattern that they learn, and they might not even be aware of it. And then they might even feel that they are right to do that, or they call it tough love, etc. But actually might not be very efficient, and they don't really understand that. And then the other reasons might be like the difference of values and all. And that can actually be a sign of lack of emotional attunement because of the mismatched values that people have. Because, for example, imagine if there is one person that really values something, like, let's say, family, but then the other person, really doesn't value spending much time with the kids. Then if this person say, oh, well, let's spend more time with the kids and all, the other person would be like, why are we spending so much time with the kids? Like, let's just let them, like, as long as they are healthy and all, it's fine. We don't need to create vacations for them, waste of money, etc. You see that there is this judgment that is mismatched because there is a values mismatch. Now, what happens when there is this mismatch really? It's not really, oh, his fault, her fault, anyone's fault. But, well, the thing is that, of course, they also shouldn't be communicating in the way that is harsh or, being really inconsiderate, because at the end of the day, it's just different perspectives. And there are like parts of me that actually resonated the dynamic with people who has these patterns of lack of capacity, for example, to not respond in a dismissive manner or even judgmental manner, because I didn't really know how healthy looked like. So for me, the unhealthy looks actually familiar. So I didn't have the proper boundaries because of that. And because I don't have the proper boundaries, then these situations coming to me, I don't know how to, maneuver and navigate through it. So that is why I became for some time a match for this kind of pattern. But then, as I learned how this dynamic works and also how healthier actually looks like, because then I have people who are actually capable to hold me with emotional safety, then I began to be better at spotting this potential dynamic and then actually know what to do with it. Because, the thing is that we might, like, subconsciously resonate and align with people who are a match to our dynamics. But when we are more aware, we become able to spot them, and we don't stop really to, never come across this kind of situation anymore in our lives. But the thing is that the moment we are able to spot this, let's say that you see a person and you talk with them for a minute and you already know that they are not the kind of people that has emotional safety for certain topics, so then you don't really get more deeper with them in certain conversations, and you can already identify it. Then the next thing is to develop boundaries that really works. And because, we often think that boundaries is about, oh, you cannot do this to me, if you do this and it's wrong, and etc. But boundaries is actually about what we are going to do with it if someone crosses it. So for me, for example, I learned that now, instead of, over explaining, over talking about why this is important for me, why I feel this way, etc., and why the other person should be more understanding for me, I stopped this way of implementing boundaries, which is a very inefficient way. But actually, if someone, after knowing that I am not okay with something, they still insist of doing it, then I pull myself away from the situation. So I am not energetically and physically available to this kind of dynamics. So for example, with people who doesn't seem to be very sensitive or even critical, with me or anyone really. If I sense that they have this kind of pattern within them, then I wouldn't get very close with them. I wouldn't share vulnerable things with them so that I don't put myself in this kind of situation. And then I also wouldn't explain myself so much. So, for example, if I say something that the other person is putting a judgment on it, like sharing their opinion a lot, which many people might do more than they are attentive with what you're saying and how you're feeling about a certain situation, then I can already feel that, okay, I'm not so comfortable. So let's say that someone really crosses the boundary and say something like, give unsolicited advice, let's say, then I would be like, oh, yeah, thank you for your opinion. And I feel that it's more aligned for me to do this. And if the person insists, I really just ignore or say, okay, and etc. But if I feel that, for example, the other person is really insisting or even get this harshness, judgmental like feeling like, oh, she is not being very bright about it, then I simply even pull myself away from this kind of relation. So if it's let's say a work relation, then I'll just keep being professional with the other person. And if it is a relationship that I don't have to nurture in my life, then I'll just let the other person go. There is no really me trying to fix the other person, because then it is me bringing this energy really that, oh, you are the one not all right, now you are the one being fixed and I am going to make you listen to me and fix you. See where this energy can be. But instead, what if I just honor the other person, like not as in, oh, I'm superior also, but actually we have differences and it's all right, so we are just not a match, then I'll let this person go. So there are different levels, of course, to how people might be crossing boundaries and how you might even sense them before they cross a boundary. Then instead of thinking what the other person should do, what are your expectations, etc., you actually learn to navigate. If the other person shows this, then what are you going to do? If the other person does that, then what am I actually going to do? And this actually puts you in a very powerful position, because now you are not really dependent on the other person. If the other person really crosses your hard boundaries and you feel that it is not really respectful, then you simply disengage. And of course, if sometimes there are people that crosses your boundary, but you really know that they don't mean it, or it's something that is not really much. Like, for example, they give unsolicited advice. Then you can say that, hey, thank you for your input, but right now I want to make my own decisions. Then you see how they handle the situation. So, for example, imagine some people, they are, oh, okay, okay, yeah. And if some people, they might get upset or feel rejected, actually, you also just let them process it. Like, because many people, they think, oh, it's the other person's responsibility, they have to deal with their own emotions. But that is also not a very fluffy energy, right? And when someone does that, I can feel like, oh, okay, yeah, I can see that the other person is struggling, and it's okay, I'll let them deal with their own emotions. I can be energetically understanding, but doesn't mean that I have to interfere, because I also trust that people are capable enough to deal with their own feelings of being rejected. And just as I also, when I do something out of lack of mindfulness and or awareness, then I would also appreciate the other person allowing me to learn. Like, they might say something like, hey, I'm actually not comfortable talking about this. Then I would say, oh, okay, I'm sorry about this. And I would process my potential feelings of rejection or that I made a mistake, etc. And then it's a lesson for me that I learn, and I appreciate that the other person wouldn't, make it a harsh situation that now it feels awkward and now you shouldn't feel this way. You see how it goes. So basically, when we also, another important thing is that when we begin to also validate how we feel, because what happens is that we also have so much of this ingrained inner voice, especially when we grow up in a harsh environment, is that, oh, I shouldn't feel this way, it might be too much, why did I even do that, and etc. This is our internalized critical voice that we learn from our environment when we grow up. So when we also learn how to deal with it, actually, we actually learn how to have proper boundaries with outside, because that inner voice is actually the same pattern, just from the outside, from other people. And if you learn how to, hey, actually, this is not all right to talk myself in this way. And I understand that you just want to help, but I don't appreciate this. And then actually change the dynamic of your inner voice, like, hey, no, how I feel is actually valid, understandable, and etc., because I perceive the situation to be in like this, and this actually hurts my feelings, and I just want connection and safety from other people. That's why I want them to understand how I feel. And when you begin to validate yourself, you actually feel more comfortable with your own needs and desires and even your own boundaries. Because when you implement boundaries, if you're in this wobbly energy, like, oh, shoot, I actually have these boundaries, maybe it's too much, I shouldn't be too harsh, then you are really having this gelatin boundaries instead of something really solid and firm. And then because you have gelatin boundaries, people are also confused when they are interacting with you. They can feel your energy. And what happens is that we humans are mirroring animals, okay? So when, for example, if I have a boundary, like I feel upset with someone and I feel that they didn't consider my feelings when they decided something. If I am weird about, oh, maybe it's okay and etc., then I will go to the person like, hey, I'm sorry to bother you, but what you did, etc., I actually feel weird about it and etc. And I know that it's too much to ask this and blah blah, versus, hey, what you decided. Actually, I felt that my feelings weren't considerate. But I would appreciate it if you can rethink about it and consider my feelings. And you see, the second one, people would naturally accept it easier because you don't have any weirdness about it. But the first one, the other person might, ooh, something feels uncomfortable, because when you communicate, you are feeling uncomfortable. And subconsciously, they can catch it and then they mirror you. So now they are feeling also uncomfortable, but then they don't know what is happening. So then what they do subconsciously, they try to dismiss or attack even the source of the discomfort, which is you. And now they say, hey, why are you worrying about this? I didn't mean this, and etc. Or they try to convince you out of trying to convince them. So then they are fixing the situation. So this is actually important work. Is that if you want to really, have solid boundaries, then first you need to actually validate how you feel. And by validating, pay attention to also the other pattern, which is the other side of the coin of wobbly gelatin boundaries, is that, you can either be, oh, I'm not sure if it's too much, maybe I'm asking too much, and etc. There are two sides of this coin. One is the example that I gave, and the other can be that going to the person and say, hey, you shouldn't do this, and you might be louder or more upset and etc. Like the emotions might be louder simply because you feel wobbly inside. So now it is externalized, and then in the form of, oh, I need to really make sure. that the things will go in the way that I am comfortable with, or else it will not, be validated. Because internally you are not validating fully the validity of how you feel, what you need, what you desire, then it is this insecurity is actually externalized in the form of how loud or angry or even, assertive, aggressive, borderline aggressive that it might come out. And many people actually don't realize this, especially when many people, they are on this healing journey of from being a people pleaser to actually having healthier dynamics with other people. They sometimes go through this phase where this is my strict boundaries, this is what I need and what I do, and I don't care about the other people, but I put my needs first and etc. And I have encountered this before from another person. And let's just say that, it comes from a place that, oh, I cannot have any flexibility at all because if I do, I am betraying my own needs, which is not necessarily true. But for people who, for a long time, compromise their own needs for the sake of other people's needs, they will feel this compelling, feeling to defend their whole needs without any flexibility at all, because any flexibility can remind them that they actually were too flexible before and it hurted them. So now they are afraid of going back to that dynamic. But the healthy relationships actually require us to really consider each other's need in a balanced way. So, for example, if I want to eat chocolate ice cream and you want to eat vanilla ice cream, then we cannot just say, oh, I just go to the chocolate ice cream store and then you whatever you do, I don't know, but I want the chocolate store. It doesn't work like this in relationships. But then, of course, like one thing is like working with each other so that both of us can get our needs met the best way possible. Another thing is actually to compromise our deep inner values and like the real needs that we need so that the relationship can function. So that's also another extreme. But anyways, pay attention to this as well, because I noticed that many people, when they are recovering from being a people pleaser, from being often not considerate of their own needs, feelings, emotions, desires, they might also go for a moment this inflexibility that actually it's not helpful as well for the relations. So there is this saying that sometimes the person who is in the bad end of receiving, they become the perpetuators themselves. It's kind of like this because some people, they grow up having their needs aside by other people, then they suddenly like, oh, now it's all about me. I don't care about other people anymore. But then they are just, propagating this dynamic that the other person that they previously encountered, this selfish person, they are actually doing something really similar. Which so it's important to pay attention to it. But actually, we are like doing this if this ever happens. We are just doing it because we are so afraid of compromising our needs that we are like an immovable fortress for our needs without understanding that, okay, it's actually not that bad if the other person is also caring and considerate about your needs. So you can both do this for each other.